Valter Walker's rise through the UFC heavyweight ranks had been one of the division's most exciting stories in recent months. A 27-year-old powerhouse with an unorthodox grappling arsenal and a penchant for finishing fights in spectacular fashion, Walker looked poised to break into the elite tier after his latest performance at UFC 321 in Abu Dhabi. His submission victory, another heel hook, his fourth in a row, made him the first fighter in UFC history to record 4 consecutive wins by that technique. But what should have been the defining moment of his career has now taken a grim turn. Despite celebrating the biggest win of his professional journey, Walker revealed shortly after the event that he had suffered a broken fibula during the fight. The news came as a shock to fans and fellow fighters, as Walker showed no visible signs of distress inside the cage before securing the finish over Louis Sutherland. Hours later, he shared images of his heavily bandaged leg on social media, along with a message thanking fans for their support and acknowledging that he would now need heavy recovery before returning to competition. The exact moment of the injury remains unclear, but there's a strong chance it happened early in the bout. Sutherland targeted Walker's lead leg with several brutal kicks, and the cumulative damage may have caused the fracture. Despite that, Walker pressed forward, executed a beautiful takedown transition, and locked in the heel hook that has become his trademark, a move that once again showcased his rare mix of creativity and composure under pressure. What makes this setback even more heartbreaking is how close Walker was to breaking into true contender status. With the win, he extended his streak to 4 straight finishes, all by submission, and climbed to number 14 in the UFC heavyweight rankings. His grappling-heavy style has drawn comparisons to Fabricio Werdum, though his explosiveness and leg lock game add a modern twist to the archetype. Walker's journey to this point had already been one defined by resilience. Just days before UFC 321, he almost withdrew from the fight after his back seized up during fight week, leaving him unable to breathe deeply without sharp pain. He pushed through that scare, determined not to lose his shot at making history. In hindsight, that decision showcased both his warrior mentality and the toll that constant physical strain takes on fighters trying to stay active. Unfortunately, this new injury means Walker's 2025 campaign is likely over before it really began. Depending on the severity of the fracture and whether surgery is required, recovery from a broken fibula can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, possibly longer when factoring in rehabilitation and fight preparation. For a heavyweight still carving out his identity, that kind of downtime can be costly. Even so, the buzz around Walker hasn't died down. His blend of submission artistry and relentless drive has made him a fan favorite in record time, and his latest performance only reinforced that image. Fighters and fans across social media were quick to send messages of support, praising his grit and hinting that this setback could turn into another chapter in his growing legend. For now, Valter Walker's focus shifts from chasing rankings to rebuilding his body. With his youth, momentum, and the UFC's need for fresh heavyweight contenders, the Brazilian story is far from over. When he returns, it'll be with the knowledge that he's already overcome worse, and that even a broken leg couldn't stop him from making history. Alex Pereira's name continues to dominate the conversation in MMA, even while he's sidelined with injury. After starching Magomed Ankalaev in the first round to reclaim the UFC light heavyweight title, Pereira has been talking about bigger, wilder things. Literally. His dream scenario now involves moving up to heavyweight to face Jon Jones, and not just anywhere, but on US soil, at the White House of all places. That's vintage Poatan. Ambitious, unpredictable, and a little bit surreal. Dana White, never one to kill a buzz outright, admitted he prefer Pereira stay put at 205 pounds, but the fact that he didn't dismiss the idea outright shows just how much star power the Brazilian champion commands right now. Still, not everyone is eager to see Pereira chase a fantasy matchup. Inside his own division, hungry contenders are circling, and one of the loudest voices is Carlos Uelberg. The fast-rising New Zealander, fresh off a knockout of Dominic Reyes, believes it's his time to challenge for the belt, not Jiri's. Uelberg made his case bluntly, pointing out that Jiri has already had 2 chances against Pereira and failed to make it competitive either time. From Uelberg's perspective, running it back again makes little sense. He's coming off 2 losses to Pereira, Uelberg said. I don't see a third happening. He's campaigning as much as you can because it's the big fights that you want, but it's my time now. It's a fair argument. Jiri's name still carries weight, and his wild, unorthodox style makes him a fan favorite, but it's hard to justify a trilogy when the score sits 2-0 and neither fight hinted at a different outcome. Jiri's comeback knockout of Khalil Rountree showed that his heart and power remain intact, but Pereira has proven to be a puzzle he can't seem to solve. Meanwhile, Uelberg's stock has risen sharply. Once known mainly as Israel Adesanya's teammate, the 33-year-old has turned into a legitimate contender in his own right. Sharp striking, calm composure, and a quiet confidence that echoes some of his city kickboxing predecessors. What complicates things is Pereira's current condition. The broken foot he suffered during the Ankalaev fight means fans won't be seeing him in the cage for a while. That opens a window for the division to move without him, or at least build its next storyline. If Pereira insists on a heavyweight jump to face Jon Jones, the UFC might have to make a decision about the light heavyweight belt, just as it has with other champions who tested themselves in higher divisions. Whether that would mean an interim title or Pereira vacating altogether is still unclear, but the situation creates a ripple effect across both weight classes. In the meantime, Uelberg's call-out feels like the freshest angle in a division that's been dominated by 2 men for the past year. His rise has been quiet but methodical, and with Pereira nursing an injury, his timing couldn't be better. If the UFC decides to keep the title picture moving, a matchup between Uelberg and Jiri could be the perfect eliminator, a blend of 2 different energies. Uelberg's clean, efficient striking against Jiri's reckless creativity. But as with everything involving Alex Pereira, the next chapter depends on what he wants. He's reached the point in his career where he can bend divisions to his will, where every move he makes carries consequences for everyone else. Whether it's a White House showdown with Jon Jones or another brutal title defense at light heavyweight, the sport revolves around his choices.
It was supposed to be the night Tom Aspinall confirmed his dominance as the undisputed heavyweight champion, the moment he stood tall as the face of the division. Instead, UFC 321 will be remembered for all the wrong reasons: controversy, frustration, and a finish no one wanted. Just 4.5 minutes into the main event, Ciryl Gane's accidental eye poke stopped everything in its tracks. Aspinall tried to recover, blinking through the pain, but it was clear he couldn't continue. The referee had no choice but to call the fight off, and the crowd in Abu Dhabi erupted in disbelief. Boos filled the arena, and within minutes, social media turned into a storm of anger, confusion, and debate. When the fighter payout surfaced later that night, the outrage only intensified. According to Unforgettable MMA's report, Aspinall potentially earned a staggering $3.54 million, while Gane took home $1.52 million. For a fight that ended before the first round was over, those numbers hit a nerve with fans who felt shortchanged. The post accompanying the figures summed it up bluntly: "Do you think that's too much money for a fight that didn't even have a winner?" It was a fair question, one that lit up comment sections with frustration and mockery. The irony was thick. While the main event imploded, the rest of the UFC 321 card quietly delivered some impressive performances that went largely unnoticed. Virna Jandiroba and Mackenzie Dern put on a gritty, technical battle that stretched all 5 rounds, earning them $882,000 and $682,000 respectively. Rising star Valter Walker pulled off a stunning 4th straight heel hook submission, and Quillan Salkild made highlight reels everywhere with a vicious head kick knockout. Yet none of it mattered. All that fans wanted to talk about was how the night's most disappointing moment became its most lucrative one. Tom Aspinall's reaction said it all. Furious and visibly shaken, he called the outcome complete bullshit, his voice cracking with frustration. Gade, remorseful and embarrassed, apologized immediately inside the octagon. "I'm very sorry for that, for the crowd, for the fans, for everybody. I'm sorry for myself," he said, clearly aware that the moment had slipped from triumph to disaster. Dana White later promised an immediate rematch, but admitted bluntly, "It was a great showing, shitty ending." The fans, however, weren't buying apologies. The payout figures were the final straw. "Both fighters' pay should have been divided to all the others who actually fought that day," one user commented, echoing the sentiment of many. Another wrote, "To not finish the fight, that's a lot." A more furious fan flat out said, "It's unforgivable that Gane gets a cent." The backlash wasn't just about money, it was about fairness and optics. Seeing Gane walk away with over $1 million after an accidental foul felt wrong to many, even if the foul wasn't intentional. Aspinall's father and coach, Andy Aspinall, added fuel to the fire with his own frustration, saying, "The guy who fouled him, no consequence to him, and now there's a consequence to Tom. Hopefully it'll be alright, but it might not be." His words hit hard because they captured exactly what the fans were feeling, that the one who suffered the damage was also the one paying the price. Meanwhile, online chatter only grew more cynical. "WTF, I can poke eyes for $1 million every weekend then," one fan joked. Others claimed Gane's foul looked intentional, arguing that he doesn't fight fair. It didn't matter that officials reviewed the footage and called it accidental. In the court of public opinion, the damage was already done. At its core, the uproar wasn't just about the fight ending early. It was about value, what fans pay to see, what fighters risk, and how the UFC balances spectacle and sport. After weeks of promotion, a global spotlight, and expectations of a legacy-defining showdown, the night ended with no winner, no closure, and a bitter taste that even promises of a rematch couldn't immediately fix. Tom Aspinall, once on the verge of becoming the UFC's clear-cut heavyweight king, is now stuck in limbo, his title legitimacy clouded by circumstance. Ciryl Gane, once praised for his skill and composure, is facing backlash for an accident he didn't intend. And the UFC, as always, is left juggling the fallout, a viral mess that overshadowed the fights that deserved the spotlight. In the end, UFC 321 wasn't the night anyone hoped for. It was supposed to be a coronation. Instead, it became a reminder of how unpredictable and cruel this sport can be. The rematch will eventually come, and maybe it will restore order, but for now, the story of UFC 321 isn't about triumph or legacy, it's about frustration, money, and how a single poke to the eye turned a championship dream into one of the sport's most talked about disasters.
Canadian MMA will be well represented to close out 2025, as both Gillian Robertson and Jamey-Lyn Horth have officially been booked for fights on the December 13th UFC Fight Night card in Las Vegas. Set to take place at the UFC Apex, the event will serve as the promotion's final show of the calendar year. For Robertson and Horth, it's an opportunity to end the year on a high note and keep Canadian talent in the UFC spotlight. Gillian Robertson, one of Canada's most seasoned and respected female fighters, will square off against Brazil's Yasmin Lucindo in what promises to be a meaningful strawweight clash. Robertson, who's known for her relentless grappling and slick submission game, has steadily built her reputation as one of the most dangerous ground specialists in the division. Lucindo, however, represents a major challenge. At just 22 years old, she's already climbed to the number 7 spot in the rankings, riding a wave of momentum built on her sharp striking and improved takedown defense. Their matchup isn't just a stylistic contrast, it's a fight with clear implications for the title picture. With Mackenzie Dern recently crowned as the new strawweight champion and the division still recalibrating, every ranked fight matters. Robertson currently sits at number 10, and a win over Lucindo could propel her directly into contender territory. For Lucindo, defending her higher ranking against a veteran like Robertson would cement her status as a legitimate threat to the upper echelon of the division. The winner could very well find themselves one victory away from a potential title eliminator in early 2026. Meanwhile, Jamey-Lyn Horth returns for her own test against Czech Republic's Teresa Bleda in a rebooked matchup that's been nearly a year in the making. The two were originally scheduled to fight in June before Bleda was forced to withdraw. Vanessa Demopoulos stepped in on short notice, and Horth took full advantage, earning a unanimous decision victory. Now she finally gets the opponent she'd been preparing for all along. Horth, a former BFL and LFA champion, has compiled a solid 3-2 UFC record since making her debut and continues to evolve as a complete mixed martial artist. Known for her conditioning and high-volume striking, she's shown she can adapt her style to different types of opponents. Bleda, on the other hand, brings a unique mix of length, athleticism, and ground control. After making her way to the UFC through Contender Series, she stumbled in her debut against Natalia Silva, but bounced back strongly by defeating Gabriela Fernandez. However, after a long layoff of over 2 years, questions linger about her timing and readiness heading into this fight.
The Horth versus Bleda matchup carries more intrigue than its placement on the card might suggest. It's a chance for Horth to solidify herself as one of the most promising Canadian women in the UFC, while for Bleda, it's a crucial return that could determine whether she remains a long-term player in the organization. For Canadian fans, having both Robertson and Horth featured on the same card is a rare treat, and both fights carry legitimate stakes. Robertson's bout could directly influence the strawweight title picture heading into 2026, while Horth's fight may open the door to a ranked opportunity in early 2026 if she wins decisively. As the UFC wraps up its year in Las Vegas, all eyes will be on how these two athletes perform, both representing Canada on a stage that could set the tone for their next big moves.
Another name from the golden era of MMA is stepping into the chaos of crossover boxing, and this time, it's none other than Andrei Arlovski. The former UFC heavyweight champion, who's been fighting professionally for over 2 decades, is officially set to make his Misfits boxing debut on November 9th in Nashville. For a fighter who's seen it all, from championship glory to the grind of late-career reinvention, this marks another unexpected turn in a career that just refuses to slow down. Arlovski's legacy in MMA is carved into the UFC's record books. He's one of the most experienced fighters in heavyweight history, boasting 42 UFC appearances, more wins than any other heavyweight, and a resume filled with wars against the biggest names in the sport. After leaving the UFC in June 2024, many assumed the Pitbull might quietly wind down his career or focus on coaching, but Arlovski had other ideas. He took fights in smaller promotions like Dirty Boxing Championship and even appeared in BKFC, where he was rumored to be in line for a title clash with Ben Rothwell after their tense face-off earlier this year. But instead of bare-knuckle brawling, Arlovski is now heading straight into the spectacle-driven world of Misfits boxing, a space where chaos meets celebrity and where names matter almost as much as skills. The announcement dropped earlier today, confirming that Arlovski will face British influencer-turned-boxer Kells, whose real name is Kelechi Dyke. While Kells is only 2 fights into his boxing career, he's already made waves thanks to his huge social media following and his appearance on Netflix's Too Hot to Handle. A former American football player for the London Warriors, Kells has the kind of athletic background and media presence Misfits thrives on. He last fought Chase D'Amour for the heavyweight title in Misfits, losing by unanimous decision, but his size and physicality make him a legitimate test for an aging Arlovski stepping into a new discipline. For fans, this matchup perfectly captures the bizarre but fascinating blend that defines Misfits. Legends of legitimate combat sports colliding with viral personalities from entirely different worlds. Darren Till's rise as one of the faces of Misfits boxing in 2025 has already blurred those lines further, with the former UFC contender riding 3 straight wins since making his transition. Arlovski's arrival adds even more credibility to the growing crossover circuit, showing that even former world champions are willing to dive into the entertainment-first, fan-driven scene that Misfits has built. At 46 years old, Arlovski is far past his physical prime, but his name still carries weight. He's known for his toughness, his willingness to fight anyone, anywhere, and a chin that's been tested as much as any in MMA history. Whether this move is about competition, money, or simply keeping the fire burning, it feels like a fitting chapter for a man who's been redefining longevity in combat sports for years. There's a sense that Arlovski, more than most, understands what it means to evolve with the times. Misfits boxing, meanwhile, continues to pull in figures from every corner of the fight world, from YouTubers and TikTokers to seasoned pros. And somehow, it keeps working. With Arlovski's debut set in Nashville, the event promises to mix nostalgia with novelty. Fans who grew up watching him trade blows with legends like Tim Sylvia and Frank Mir will now see him step through the ropes against a man who built his fame on a dating show. It's surreal, but it's also exactly what makes Misfits such a curious, unpredictable corner of the combat sports universe. Andrei Arlovski may no longer be chasing world titles, but he's still chasing fights,
still chasing moments. For a fighter who's always lived by the creed of staying active and staying dangerous, the move to Misfits feels less like a step down and more like a continuation of his restless nature. He's been a champion, a journeyman, a veteran, and now at nearly 50, he's a showman too. The pit bull is back, not in the octagon this time, but in a ring where anything can happen and where every punch lands somewhere between sport and spectacle.
Mackenzie Dern isn't happy with UFC analyst Dean Thomas after his pre-fight remarks downplaying her title bout at UFC 321. Dern became the new UFC strawweight champion last weekend in Abu Dhabi, defeating Virna Jandiroba by unanimous decision to capture the vacant 115-pound title left behind by Zhang Weili. It was the biggest night of her career, but it didn't take long for her to hear about Thomas's comments labeling the fight as the most insignificant title fight in recent UFC history. Before the event, Thomas had suggested that because Zhang Weili vacated the belt to move up and fight Valentina Shevchenko at flyweight, the strawweight division lacked a meaningful storyline, and that the new title fight felt flat. Those comments spread quickly online and rubbed a lot of fans and fighters the wrong way, especially Dern, who was about to fight for her first UFC championship. Speaking on the Ariel Helwani show after her victory, Dern made it clear she didn't appreciate being dismissed. She said she couldn't understand how any world title fight could ever be called insignificant. John Jones gave up his belt and Tom Aspinall became the champion. What do we in the strawweight division have to do with it? People can't retire, can't go up and wait? For a vacant belt, who else would fight for it? So I don't understand what would be so insignificant fighting for a championship, she said. She pointed out that Weili had done everything she needed to in the division and earned the right to move up, but that didn't make the fight for the vacant belt meaningless. They gotta have a champion, so I don't understand. How is any championship fight insignificant? Dern added that she expected more from someone in Thomas's position. As a commentator, and I think he helps training coaches too, I thought it was a little bit, I didn't understand it. Dern's reaction was measured but firm. She made it clear she respects everyone who steps into the octagon and believes every title fight deserves that same respect. She also mentioned that her win was not only for herself, but for the entire division, which continues to evolve after Zhang's departure. For Dern, the fight represented the culmination of years of growth since transitioning from jiu-jitsu to MMA. She had to learn striking, improve her conditioning, and overcome personal struggles to get to this moment. To hear someone imply that the belt she fought for didn't matter clearly struck a nerve. Thomas, meanwhile, hasn't directly responded to Dern's comments, but this isn't the first time his analysis has stirred debate. Earlier this year, he was criticized for calling a potential Khamzat Chimaev title win a disaster for the UFC. Remarks he later clarified were from a promotional standpoint rather than a personal one. Still, many fighters have taken issue with how blunt his takes can sound. For Dern, this moment feels like validation. She's now the official face of a division that's gone through major changes, and she's eager to prove she's worthy of the belt. She admitted she wanted to finish Jandiroba to make her win undeniable, but is already thinking about what's next. Tatiana Suarez could be a potential first challenger, or perhaps Yan Xiaonan if the UFC wants a fresh matchup. Either way, Dern seems ready to embrace being the one with the target on her back. After hearing all the noise around her, Dern ended her comments with a quiet confidence. Every title means something. If it didn't, I wouldn't have worked this hard for it.